Hey guys, Mug here with a new video for you. This is a follow-up to our previous lesson where we looked at how to create scatter brushes in Photoshop, and we looked at our brushes window and some of the settings that we have with that there. And just to remind you real quick, here's our window, and these are some of the adjustments that we made last time. This lesson, today we are going to cover looking at the layer palette as well as making some selections with our selection tools, and how possibly, if we have time here, to do paint bucket and gradient tools. I'm going to clear off my canvas here, and I left all these leaves on here so that I could show you how we clear something out and how we make a clean layer. Now, of course, we could always make a new layer at the bottom of our layer palette. Just to remind you, our layer palette was right here on the bottom right hand corner. We can make the window larger if we click and drag on the bottom corner. But our layer palette shows multiple layers here. We can have as many as, we could have hundreds of layers if we needed to get all of the information that we need for this particular project. So here I only have one layer that's showing. If I wanted to make a new layer, I can go down to the bottom of my layer palette right here. Or I can always go up to the top right corner of my layer palette and I can choose new layer. There are a lot of, there's a handful of ways to do everything in Photoshop. So this particular way, I'm going to show you how to select an entire layer. And you can do that by holding down Command or Control for the PC users out there. Command or Control and then A. And that is select all. So this is kind of your first glimpse into what a selection looks like if you've been watching my tutorials. And if you look at the edge of my canvas, it looks like, and I'm going to get rid of that annoying leaf real quick, we have these marching ants, and it's like a dotted line that's moving all the way around my canvas or whatever area I have selected. Now, because I chose to select all, I have chosen to select the entire layer, edge to edge. And you can see the selected area by seeing these marching ants. If I then hit delete on my keyboard, it will delete everything I had selected. Now, since I had the entire canvas selected, it clears the entire canvas. That is not the only way to get that done, but it is probably the quickest way. Now, I have a selection made, and what that means is I have an area of my canvas, in this case the entire canvas, that I'm going to now do something with. Well, I've already done with this area what I wanted to do, which was delete it. So I can deselect this area by either going to the top of my screen and going to Select, and then Deselect. But as you can see, right next to Deselect, it tells us what the shortcut is, which on a Mac, it would be Command D, or on a PC, it would be Control D. So I'm going to hit Command D, and now I do not have a selection made. So we started with a fresh canvas, no pixels on it, it's clean. You can see the checkerboard pattern. That means we have absolute transparency here. I'm going to show you how to make a selection and then how to fill in that selection here. So I'm going to start with my first selection tool. If you go to your toolbox over here on the left hand side, the first selection tool below the move tool is the rectangular marquee. And the rectangular marquee selects an area on your canvas in the shape of a rectangle. You can also make a perfect square by holding down Shift on your keyboard. Now that's the same command whether you have a Mac or a PC. So in any of these programs, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, if you hold Shift and you're making a shape, or you're selecting a shape, or you're modifying something, you will either keep it in proportion, or in this case, it will keep it as a square. And as long as I let go of my mouse before I let go of Shift, it will remain a square selection. I can now do anything I want to this particular area. Now, if you were editing a photo, for instance, which we will go over in a future lesson, if you're editing a photo, at this point you would edit either the color of the photo, or you could do some modifications, do an adjustment. You could even cut or copy pixels. What I'm going to show you is how we're going to use the brush tool, which we showed you in the last lesson, And the difference between having just an open canvas to paint on and having a very selected area to paint on. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush first because this is kind of large. So I'm going to use the brackets just to the right of the letter P, and the bracket that's on the left will make my brush smaller. I'm going to go back to my brush window as well, and I'm going to turn the scattering all the way down so that I can be a little bit more specific in terms of the area I'd like to cover here. So my colors are still set from the last video we did, orange and green, and you're going to see a little variety of color as we paint in here. But as you can see, even though my cursor is going outside of my selected area here, it's only allowing me to put in color in that selected area. So we have selected a specific portion of our canvas that we want to modify or add pixels to or change pixels, and this is what we're doing. It would work the same. Again, I have an area selected now, so we hit delete. It'll delete whatever's inside. If I use a regular brush, if I just went back into my brushes and just got the good old regular 150 pixel brush and brushed here, it gives you a better idea of exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to deselect, or actually I'm going to delete these pixels first. I'm going to hit delete, clears it out, and then I'm going to hit Command, or for you PC users, Control D for deselect. And I can try a different type of selection here. I'm going to go through the rest of these fairly quickly now that you understand kind of what a selection does. So we have the elliptical marquee. And by the way, I don't know if I've said this in previous videos, but I want to make sure it's clear. Any tool on your toolbox that has this small triangle in the bottom right corner means there's more than one tool there. And you can click and hold down that tool and it'll show you the rest of the tools. So the elliptical marquee will make an ellipse, or to the layperson an oval, and if you hold shift it will keep it a perfect circle. Does the same thing for our selected area. This time I'll switch to green just to switch it up. And if I try to paint inside, it will only allow me to paint inside that selection. I'm going to clear that out and deselect. We also have the ability to select a single row, so that's actually a single row of pixels, and it'll make a line if we fill that in. It'll be difficult to see on such a small, we have a high resolution image here. It's 300 pixels per inch. So that means that this is a very thin line that we're filling in. It's 1/300th of an inch. But if I zoom in, and to zoom I just click on the Z on my keyboard, and that's for Mac or PC. And when I click on Z, I can click and drag and zoom in, and you'll see, if we zoom in far enough, you can see the row of pixels here. So side by side, each one of these pixels is a single row of pixels that we selected and that we filled in. I'm going to clear that layer out again by hitting Command or Control A and then delete. And I can zoom back out if I get my zoom tool and I click and drag up and to the left. It also works if you hold down Alt on your keyboard, and you can zoom out. If you let go of Alt, it'll zoom back in. All right, a couple more things for today's lesson, and then we'll move on to another topic. So I'm going to deselect this area I have selected, and I'm going to show you a couple more tools. I'm not going to get to layers today. We'll do that on a different video. So the next tool down is the lasso tool. I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. The regular lasso tool works just like a free hand, so you can make any kind of organic shape that you'd like. And again, same deal. Whatever we do or whatever we select, we can fill in. So if I go back over with the brush, it'll only select that area. And the next lasso tool, sorry, right above it here. Shortcut for the lasso, by the way, is the letter L. That's Mac or PC. I also have a polygonal lasso. The polygonal lasso allows me to basically play connect the dots, except we don't really have any dots. We'll have to make them ourselves. So every time you click your mouse, it's going to put another dot, and then you can fill in, or it's going to give you a line between those dots. So if I wanted to make some kind of angular shape like this here, to make a selection, and then also fill that in as well. I use this tool a lot if I'm trying to create a mask, or I'm going to edit a building or something like that, or a car, something with straight edges. And you know what? I'm going to save the magnetic lasso for when we start doing some image manipulation, because the magnetic lasso actually looks at color and makes a selection based on color. So I'm also going to look over our quick selection and our magic wand in a separate lesson. So these are basic selections then that you can make and fill in specific colors. So the marquee tool and your lasso tool. Okay, lastly, before we go, we're going to talk about layers. So your layer palette over here on the bottom right hand corner, and of course I drag mine out because I kind of like mine out and about here, and I feel like when you're watching a video maybe it helps if it's not tucked in the corner. So I have one layer here. I can make as many layers as I want, and I can do that by clicking on this little icon, and I'm going to click on there, and you'll see every time I click on it I've got a new layer. So now I have 6 layers. The one that's on top, okay, the one that's on top of the list is actually the one that would appear to be on top when you look at it here on your canvas. And the bottom one would appear to be on the bottom. So I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to layer 6. I'm going to paint some red. And I've just got a basic brush, and I'll paint some red in there. I'm going to go to layer 5, and I'll change the color up. I'll paint some green. And you'll see how it's appearing behind the red. That's because my red layer is literally on top. And if I go back in here, I'm going to get a different color. Blue. Whoops. You know what? I made a common mistake right there. I didn't change my layer. You're going to paint on whichever layer you have selected. So I need to select a different layer here. Try that again. So I go to blue. Then I'm going to select another layer, and I'm going to pick a new color. Let's do some orange. Okay. And again, these are just kind of nondescript colors, nondescript brushes. I just want to explain to you and show you the different ways we make layers. And then I'll do a couple more just quickly here. I've got a purple layer. And then lastly, I'll pick, let's see, we'll do like a blue-green. Kind of an aqua. Okay, so now that you've seen me kind of use these layers here, I can actually reorder all of these layers and get a totally different effect. So if I wanted to bring my blue-green up to the top, I can literally just go and click on that layer, and you'll see that as I start to move it up, you're going to see the area between each layer kind of light up, and you almost have like a highlighted area. And each one here, it's going to change positions. And I can drag each layer to whatever position I want. If I want to put the violet one on top, go right up there, and that's on top here. Layers can be deleted by dragging them down to the trash can. And what else here? We can drop the opacity, or how much you can see through each layer, right here where it says opacity, 100%. So at 100%, you can't see through it at all. And at 0%, you can see through it completely. So if I bring it up to 50, approximately 50, you can actually see through it. And you can mess around with that. I encourage you to just spend some time, make different layers, see how they interact with one another, reorder them, and all those types of things. Okay, that does it for today's video, and we look forward to the next one. We'll talk a little bit more about making selections using photos.